Growing up in the late 80s and early 90s, there was one genre of video game that challenged gamers like no other. I'm of course talking about the shoot 'em up, or shmup for short.
Superstar Soldier.
Dad and I loved these games. Shoot 'em ups offered a change of pace between the racing games and the mascot platformers or RPGs. It was a nice palate cleanser when you needed an adrenaline fix. There were a lot of shmups that Dad and I collected over the years, and some of them were pretty obscure and became my favorites of all time. So I'm very excited to dive into this list. Let's not waste any more time. But first, a word about this video's sponsor, Gradius Origins. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, some of the most intense gaming memories I have were spent dodging lasers, weaving through enemy fire, and trying not to lose my last life in a brutal side-scrolling shooter. For me, Gradius was the gold standard. These games were tough as nails, but the challenge was part of the fun. Mastering the upgrade system, learning the enemy patterns, and finally pulling off a perfect run, that kind of satisfaction sticks with you. And now, those legendary shoot-em-ups are back, including Gradius 1, 2, 3, Salamander, Salamander 2, and the brand new Salamander 3 in one beautiful collection, Gradius Origins, now available on Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series XS, and Steam. This collection was handled by M2, and if you know, you know. M2 has built a legendary reputation among retro fans. Their attention to detail, their respect for the original hardware, it's unmatched. Every port they touch is basically golden, and this one's no exception. With M2 behind it, Gradius Origins doesn't just preserve the legacy, it elevates it. You've got save states, rewind features, screen filters, local co-op mode, online leaderboards, and more, all while keeping that authentic arcade feel perfectly intact. So, if you're like me and have a soft spot for shmups, or you're just discovering what makes these games so special, Gradius Origins is the real deal. Big thanks to Konami for sponsoring this video. Coming in at number 10, it's Galaga 90 on the TurboGrafx 16. This game was one of my favorite games growing up, and it wasn't because it was one that we initially owned. No, this was a game I played at my buddy Chris's house. Everybody had a friend who had a different console than you, and this was my TurboGrafx 16 friend.
Let me see a Star Trek suit.
Man, I should be going out.
He introduced me to a lot of great turbo games back then. Legendary Axe, Bonk's Adventure, but specifically Galaga 90 is the one that really won over my heart.
Galaga 90!
Based on Galaga 88, which was the arcade sequel to the original Galaga, this home port of Galaga 88 just kind of added an extra bit of spice to everything in that arcade game. This was my first time playing any kind of Galaga game, and I'm so glad I started off the series on this game because this is really the best. In my opinion, it's the best Galaga there is. And all of a sudden, the game switches gameplay styles, and you are vertical scrolling like some of the more modern shooters of the time. I love these sections. You even have a little boss fight. It's just, they modernized Galaga for the 90s, and they did such a great job. At number 9, we have Dragon Spirit, another TurboGrafx 16 game. I wasn't kidding you guys, there was going to be turbo on this list. I love shmups that actually bend the genre a bit, and instead of piloting like a spaceship or like a helicopter or, an air fighter jet, you're piloting or you are some sort of like mythical creature. Dragon Spirit is a game where you take control of a dragon. And the more you power him up, the more heads he gains and becomes like a three-headed Ghidra, like from Godzilla. So cool. I loved this game. It had such great style. Namco made a ton of great shmups back in the day. They're one of the forefathers of the shmup genre, and they did such a great job here with Dragon Spirit. I absolutely adore this game. Great graphics, great setting, and gameplay, top notch. The music too, very catchy, and it sounds really good. It's also not the most challenging of shmups. It's a good beginner's shmup game. So I highly recommend this one to anybody wanting to dip their toes into the genre. Definitely check out Dragon Spirit. At number 8, we have Keio Flying Squadron. Now, this was on the Sega CD, and when we got this game, Dad and I had no idea that it would become one of the rarest games in all of the Sega CD library and all of our collection. This was one of the first cute-em-ups we ever played, and really it introduced us to the cute-em-up genre in such a fun way. Just like Dragon Spirit, in this game, you pilot a dragon. You're not actually a dragon yourself, but you're this sort of anime bunny girl riding a dragon, and it's just so cartoony. It's so much fun. There are great anime cutscenes.
Hyper cutie bunny
That kind of stuff just blew us away back in the day on the Sega CD. My gosh, anytime your Sega CD could turn into some sort of like anime or cartoon, oh man, I was here for it and I loved it. And this game just has such great animations. It has such a great sense of humor. The storyline is funny. Some of the cutscenes can get a little bit risque these days, and they're a little strange.
And what were you doing while they were stealing the key from us? You went to get a snack, you fool!
But just going on gameplay alone, this is one of the best shmups I've ever played in my life. And I remember actually getting extremely far into this game. I might have even beat this game back in the day, because this is one that we really wanted to win. Like, we really tried hard. I remember Dad and I going back and forth on this one quite a bit. And it's fantastic. The music is some of the best on the Sega CD. Like, seriously, there's so much charm and so much just that Red Book audio just immerses you into the world that they're building in this game. I would definitely get Keio Flying Squadron again, but oh my gosh, it's one of the most valuable games on the Sega CD. Coming in at number 7, it's Raiden on the Atari Jaguar. Now, you're probably looking at me and you're like, Atari Jaguar, Tyler? Really? Top 10? Raiden actually received an incredible port on the Atari Jaguar. It was 2 players. It's a wonderful vertical scrolling shooter. And this game was a hit in the arcade. And up until that point, we really hadn't gotten a great port of the original Raiden. We had other versions of Raiden on the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, but the Atari Jaguar version, just honestly, to us, it was the closest to the arcade.
What did you do? Did you get...
Jay?
Whoa! The cat!
When my dad and I first got an Atari Jaguar in like 1994, 1995, we were really having to hunt and dig for great games, because as many of you know, there are a lot of really bad games on the Atari Jaguar, but Raiden is not one of them. This is a great port of the arcade classic.
Oh my goodness, Raiden! Man, oh man, chef, it's just like the arcade.
Honestly, guys, Dad and I played Raiden together more than any other game on the console. We used to actually just go through this game as a fun 30 to 40 minute ride, just dropping those giant nukes on the screen. There was something so satisfying with that. We would strategize how we would go about using our supply of smart bombs, and you really had to if you wanted to make it to the end of the game. So on certain levels, Dad would use his smart bombs, or I'd save mine. We'd save them for the boss battles. I remember just great communication between Dad and I, and just having such a great time with this game. You know, there's better shmups. I know there are better shmups, but the memories I made with this one, it puts it here on the list. UN Squadron. Talk about a game that just brings me way back to the early days of the Super Nintendo when we were discovering each new game, and it was like some new adventure that we would go on, me and my dad, with these brand new games. And UN Squadron was just a home run for us. We absolutely loved this game. This is a Capcom classic through and through. When it first came out in the arcade, it was known as Area 88. But when it hit home consoles on the Super Nintendo, around the launch window of the console, oh man, UN Squadron is one of these side-scrolling shmups, but it's actually set in the real world and you pilot jet fighters, very anime influenced. Man, I just love the sort of non-linear approach to the gameplay here. You can actually choose where you want to go. Once you beat stage 1, you can choose how you want to attack the incoming enemy. They are slowly but surely progressing to your headquarters. Most shmups are very linear. This one, every time I play it, I feel like I can play it in a different way, whether it's by choosing a different character or choosing a different route in which to tackle the oncoming enemy. Great game, highly recommended. You have to play UN Squadron before you die. Here we have Zonk, one of my absolute favorite games in this genre. Another TurboGrafx game. Who'd have thought, right? No, I gave you guys fair warning at the beginning. There was going to be some Turbo games on this list. It wouldn't be a good top 10 shmups list if there weren't TurboGrafx games on this list. It's a great spin-off of the Bonk series. Some people don't know this. I actually read online. People are like, oh, I had no idea it was related to the Bonk series. But yeah, it is. And Zonk was a game that I remember first discovering at a store kiosk at a Toys R Us, okay? So picture young Tyler waddling through a Toys R Us, wandering up to the TurboGrafx 16 kiosk. This was late in the system's life, and it was sort of already kind of dying and on its way out. And I remember playing Zonk and just thinking this was the coolest game ever. This is like Bonk to the future. You know, you're a futuristic version of Bonk. Your name is Zonk, and it's a side-scrolling, beautiful shmup that just has the most amazing parallax scrolling on each stage. It has this incredibly pumping soundtrack that just gets you going. It makes you want to go to each new stage and discover what secrets lie within. And I love the energy of this game. It has this 80s cyberpunk anime vibe, and I just love the art direction. I love the style and just the look of the character. He is one of my favorite mascots ever created because of just the way he's designed, the way he looks. He just screams 90s attitude, and especially like early 90s too. I just love this design. I love this character, but the game is great. It's one of the greatest games on the TurboGrafx, in my opinion. I love the buddy system where you get these familiar helper characters that are so cartoonish and you get to select which one you want from the start. I remember when I first got to stage 2 and the music for that city level came swooping in. It's one of the coolest, most catchy video game songs I've ever heard. When I saw the beautiful parallax scrolling and how that level evolves as you go through it, with that soundtrack, that music, I just knew I had to have this game. But it wouldn't be until we got a Turbo Duo years later that we started really getting into these games and getting them for really cheap, because a lot of them were being discontinued by that point. It's a must-have. At number 4, it's Elemental Master. Now, this is a game I didn't discover until many years later. I'm talking about like maybe 10 years ago is when I first discovered Elemental Master. And I had no idea this game even existed. But once I saw it, once I laid eyes on it, some video online, honestly, it was probably GameSack, if I'm not mistaken. It was doing for shmups something I'd never seen before, and that was, it's a shmup, but it's set in a fantasy world, which already ticks the right box for me. I love it when shmups do that. But you're on foot in this game, and it almost feels like you're some sort of role-playing game character or just adventure character taking on a shooter. And it's just so cool to be sort of walking around in this vertical scrolling shooter and using all of these magical powers. The attention to detail in this game is some of the best, most detailed sprite work I've ever seen on the Sega Genesis. There's just something about this game. It's so challenging and so difficult, but not in a way that makes you feel like, oh, it's impossible or it's cheap. No, it invites you to keep coming back and keep discovering new ways to tackle its levels. There's a non-linear approach to the levels here. You can choose which level you want. I love that in shooters. I love that in any game, really. I mean, going back to Mega Man, that was one of the first games that ever showed me that I could choose my own way to play the game in a non-linear way. I love when games let you level select. What puts this game over the top for me is just its amazing soundtrack. I kid you not, guys, this soundtrack is one of my favorite video game soundtracks of all time. The Sega Genesis, with the right talent, could produce some of the greatest sounds of the 16-bit generation. This is one of those renovation games on the Sega Genesis that is so unique and different. And that was a company that was distributing these games that just really kind of stood out, that were different. They were pulling these games from Japan that maybe other publishers didn't want to tackle, but they had the guts to do it. Elemental Master is probably my favorite hidden gem on the Sega Genesis, and it's one of my favorite shmups of all time. And at number 3, very fittingly, is Gradius III on the Super Nintendo. Now, some of you might be thinking, why is Gradius III this high on your list? Gradius III just means a lot to me, and it was one of the first games that Dad and I got on the console. Everything in that sort of magical honeymoon period for the Super Nintendo and Dad and I, like, it was just magical. This brand new Nintendo console pushing the 16-bit era further. Even though I had played Life Force and Gradius on the original Nintendo, Gradius III just kind of took it to another level with its incredible graphics and just really amazing soundtrack. I actually streamed this game a couple of weeks ago here on the channel, and I hadn't played it in a long time, but I was reminded of how much I love this game. It gets all serious. Like, okay, that was something that like other games didn't do. Like the music never changed mid-level back in the 8-bit days. There were times in the stream when I would get to certain songs and they just immediately, it's like all these little explosions of dopamine in my brain just went off, and it was just happiness. Happiness in a video game. There are some people who will never understand what us retro gamers feel when we play these games. And I wish I could articulate it, but it's like opening these little windows to your heart and your soul. Like that sort of childhood wonder just comes roaring back in a way that is undescribable. And video games, I feel like, do it better than any other medium. They have that sort of magic that they can do that, but video games even more so. And Gradius III is one of those that I feel like does it on this like huge level. There's something about the music in this game that it's one of my favorite soundtracks of all time, and it just embodies this sense of adventure, space adventure, and just innocence. There's like an innocent quality to it. And when I hear it, I'm immediately 5 years old again in 1991, sitting in front of my Super Nintendo. The game can be very hard, especially in the later levels, but it has a nice sort of learning curve where beginners can kind of jump into the genre with this game, just like I did when I was 5 years old. This was the game that really taught me how to play shmups. On the NES, we really didn't own many shmups. In fact, one of the only games we owned was Silver Surfer, which was like the most difficult game on the planet, and it made me hate shooters. But here comes Gradius III, and it has a much better learning curve. It eases the player into the genre. Gradius III has some of the greatest, most innovative stages I had ever seen in the genre. I remember as a kid when I first got to the bubble stage, you know, that's like stage 2, and you've got all of these bubbles floating around, and they're enemies. When I first saw that giant bubble on the screen as a kid, that giant sprite, it was just mind-blowing. And to this day, when I get to that stage, I get so excited for that giant bubble. Incredible game, and honestly, it belongs right here at number 3. At number 2, we have Thunder Force 4, or Lightning Force as it's known as here in the States. For some reason, The fourth entry to the Thunder Force series got released over here in America as Lightning Force. Almost a spelling mistake on the cover art. You know, don't judge a book by the cover is what I say, because this is one of the greatest shooters of all time. It's one of those games that, again, I love non-linear shmups. I love games that let you level select, and this is one of them, but there's a twist on it where you get to actually decide the order ahead of time in which you play each of these stages. So truly, it makes every experience with this game different based on how you want to play the stages. You can pick ahead of time. It's one of the greatest shooters ever made. It consistently makes it onto top 10 lists for a reason. Because when you see that parallax scrolling on these stages, it's just done in such a way that you feel like you're playing something of incredible craftsmanship. Like, I feel like the developers were just geniuses over there at Technosoft, because honestly, I can't really put this up against any other shooters on the Sega Genesis. Again, with me, it's the music. I think you find, honestly, with a lot of my favorite games, they have an incredible soundtrack. And this one is one of the greatest soundtracks on the Sega Genesis. If you ever want to prove some sort of Super Nintendo fanboy that the Sega Genesis has better music or could do this style of music better than the Super Nintendo, look no further than Thunder Force 4. And coming in at number 1, it's MUSHA. Now, I bet a lot of you could have guessed at this point that MUSHA was going to be at number 1, because let's be honest, guys, MUSHA is one of the greatest games on the Sega Genesis. I remember getting this game Christmas of 1994, and when I got it, I really didn't know what to expect from it. I think we had seen MUSHA at our local EB Games. We were doing all of our video game shopping at this EB Games back in the day, and MUSHA was one we always saw on the shelf. It even made its way into some of the discount bins at this point in 1994, and I remember we always had our eye on it because it just looked like such a great game. And eventually we got the Sega channel, and I think we first played MUSHA on the Sega channel, and that's where we learned it was actually a great game. And so suddenly Christmas 1994 rolls around, and Mom and Dad get me all sorts of Sega Genesis games. Like, that was the most insane Christmas of my life. And one of the games was MUSHA. And it would go on to become my favorite shmup of all time.
It's Super Thunderblade, Mascot, and Strider! It's 3 games in 1 box!
Hey!
And really, the Aleste series, which MUSHA comes from, the Aleste series, it's one of my favorite series in the entire genre. When people talk about the best shooters of all time, this is often on the top. Oh man, when I first got to that stage where you're just kind of cruising along and suddenly the ground falls out below you and there's all of this depth and parallax scrolling from below you where there's this lava pit down there and you watched those tiles fall down. It was so cool. It was so ingenious and so well designed. And it just made me realize there was so much love and care put into the design of this game. It's a work of art. That's what MUSHA is. It's a work of art, and from start to finish, you're just going to have such a great time. Easy to learn, tough to master, and all of the best shooters are like that. I remember eventually we got Robo Aleste, a great sequel on the Sega CD, but even the Sega CD with its Red Book audio and better textures and details, the original MUSHA on Sega Genesis is actually better. I definitely enjoy MUSHA on Sega Genesis more. Well, that's about it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this look back at my favorite shmups of the 1990s. My gosh, guys, there were so many incredible shmups that came out back in those days. And really, I could do an entirely different video on 8-bit shmups or 32-bit shmups. So let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed this video, want me to dive into some more games in the genre. I would love to. And if this is your first time to the channel, do consider subscribing. I love talking about my game crazy family and all the amazing adventures we had with video games, so many of which were caught on tape by Dad. And if you want to help support what I do here on My Retro Life, consider becoming a patron over on patreon.com/myretrolife, or just click the join button here on YouTube. Thank you guys so much. Catch you next time.